I thought I was too tired to rant. I guess I'm not. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and today we are doing another Dollar Tree book review. Today we are going over The Storm Crow by Kalyn Josephson. It's a very hard name to say, Josephson. Alright, here's my normal disclaimer that I'm going to be going over the entire plot of this book. So if you are against spoilers or if this is on your TBR, you can leave the video now and come back when you've read it. We can start talking about it together. Yay. Alrighty, full disclosure, I did not like this book, so I'm not going to be talking very kindly about it. This is a fantasy. There is one country called Rodair. The whole point of Rodair is that it has these magic crows, these magic giant crows that people ride, and the Princess Anthea, or just Thea is what she's normally called, is a crow rider in training. The book actually starts in media res, which is pretty cool. It's a very strong opening. Thea is riding around on a French crow across the city, and she's talking about the various things she sees as the city sets up for the celebration of the egg hatching. All of the eggs of these magical crows all hatch at once on a special day, and this is also the day that Thea will receive her own egg. This is her own crow that she will be able to train and bond with and ride forever and all time, I guess. I don't know. I really like this opening because it really shows off the culture and how the crows have shaped the environment. You see like the storm crows and what they do, and you see the earth crows getting ready for a harvest and whatnot, but you also see some of the cultural impact of the crows, how this entire city celebrates the egg hatching, how it's connected to the royal family. You also see the importance of being a crow rider to Thea. You see a little glimpse of her relationship with her mother and her best friend Kiva. And then the Fire Nation attacks. Okay, it's not the Fire Nation, it's called Elusia. Elusia is this empire that has taken over some of the other nearby countries, Jinde and what's the other one? Ambriel, I think. The Empire Elusia has taken over these other countries, and they are threatening the borders of Rodair. And on this specific night, there was some treason that happened, and they got into the city and took down all of the crows. So in one night, there is a crow massacre, and all of the crows are just gone. Thea's mother is gone, her trainer, her crow riding trainer is gone. Many of the people knowledgeable about crows are killed because, I mean, obviously it's the crow riders. They were killed along with the crows. And then all of the eggs in the rookery, the royal rookery that were going to hatch that night, they are also destroyed. That all happens in the prologue, so it is kind of just like all of a sudden there's this ambush and then it fades to black, everything's on fire, things like that. And the first chapter is actually 6 months later, and Thea is out of bed for one of the first days ever since that night. The first chapter is very rushed because it has to explain like what happened in those 6 months between the prologue and the opening of the first chapter, and how like Thea has been affected by it, you know, her emotional state. She is a trauma survivor, and so she has a lot of survivor's guilt and things like that. Also, you have how the climate and the environment of their country has been shaped around the fact that they no longer have crows. Also, you have to set up the rest of the book, and so we get this sudden mention of an older sister, which was not mentioned at all in the prologue. It was just the mother, trainer, and then Kiva, her best friend, who's a palace guard. There's no mention of the older sister at all, but all of a sudden she's in the first chapter, and you're like, okay, whatever. And she is agreeing to a marriage proposal between the Elusian prince and the Rodairan princess. So Kalisa agrees to marry Thea to the Elusian prince. Now, it is very well stated that this is not because the Elusian prince is in love with her or because they're trying to like harbor trade routes or anything. This is very much a scare tactic. They're basically taking Thea in as like a hostage and threatening her, saying if she doesn't go through with this marriage, they will kill the entire country, which is terrifying, knowing that, you know, the oppressive army is at your border. So Thea just kind of has to go along with it. All of that is set up in like the first chapter. The second chapter is when Thea finds the egg. So that sets up like the conflict, but then also like the rebellion hope. The way Thea can fight back in this like rebellion thing is that she just so happened to find a crow egg that just happened to survive the massacre, but she doesn't know how to hatch it. So she finds this crow egg and she's like, this is the symbol of our country, this is our hope, this is our weapon, this is how we can win this rebellion. But also, I don't know how to hatch this one crow, so it's still in egg form. And then also the fact that the crow is going to be like a baby bird. I don't know, it's weird, but she keeps saying like, this will be our one weapon against the Eleusians, because their whole thing was that they tried to defeat the crows, they tried to kill out the crows, they broke the culture, they broke the world of Rodair. That's all very, very rushed, and it happens so quickly. It's so weird because Thea just like runs out of the castle in a huff that she has to get married to the enemy prince, and then finds the egg, and then Kiva finds her at the rookery, and then she's talking to Kiva. She's like, I found this egg, and they're like, we have a plan now. We're gonna hatch this egg. And it's like, this happened all in like 2 seconds. Please, I need more time. The rest of the book has very little plot. It is literally just scenes of what's her name, Thea, talking with Arison, her betrothed, and talking to the evil queen and showing her that, you know, she's not going to back down, and she's not going to hold her tongue even if the queen is evil. And then talking with Kiva, and then there's this other guy that's like a second love interest, but it's probably a fake out anyway, and it doesn't matter. And then also having like secret rebellion spy time, which is just so boring. Nothing about this book is original. It really feels flat. It really feels like a carbon copy of literally every rebellion style war book, which is just so upsetting because there was a few nuggets of creativity. I feel like the world was set up really well, especially Rodair. That's obviously the country we see the most because it is like her home country. Rodair has this gift of magical crows. They're somehow related to like the religion of the country. I'm not exactly sure, but they were like magical crows that had elemental magic. So they really impacted the environment, and you see that impact and how it changes once the crows are no longer there. The country is defined as tropical, and she says that, you know, the various crows, like the earth crows, would, you know, take care of the plants and the harvests and whatnot, and the wind crows would keep it cool, and the storm crows would, you know, make it rain or like cause it to the weather to be nice or whatever. But without that, this now really hot, sandy, humid climate is almost unbearable. It's even to the people who have lived there forever, because it's so different than how it was with the crows. And then you also have the fact that the crops are all dying because you don't have the irrigation systems and you know, crow magic to keep it together. It shows the impact not just on the culture and Thea because she wanted to be a crow writer, but how the actual world, like their country and climate, is no longer good because of this. Some of the backstories of the characters were really cool and fun and imaginative. It really sucks that the rest of the characterization was super flat, boring, carbon copies of literally every other character trope. None of the characters really had a character arc. I'll get to Thea and even Arison's in a second, but like Kiva, best friend, palace guard, she didn't really have a character arc. She was very flat. So is Kalisa, the sister. The other love triangle, what's his name? Kalis was like nothing. It was just there. The queen, the evil queen, no character arcs, no character development, very little when it comes to the actual main characters. So yeah, the backstories were kind of fun and interesting and well thought out, but like they didn't do anything to the actual character. It didn't really mean anything to me. Some of the fun things were Kiva. She's from a different country called Kurovi, which is just like the northern really cold country that's like just any Arctic tundra fantasy country. Her mother was like part of the royal family there, like not royal, but you know, whatever important family that's there, but she got pregnant, and so then she was turned out, and so she became part of the royal guard of Rodair. And Kiva was obviously the child that was outlawed with her. Kalis, his father like sold him to like cover a debt, and he had to become like a fighter, like a that you would bet on. I don't know what they're called, boxing, betting, fighting, that kind of stuff. And he was forced to do that. He was indebted over and over again because, obviously they use the same tactics that they use for any like indentured servant or slave or anything like that. It's like, oh, you stole me for all the food you ate or the clothes or this and that. And so he finally just like escapes. And so he's like very traumatized from that. He's got scars and stuff all over his hands. He's a scientist, but his like hands shake and stuff. So he's like damaged. He didn't really have anything other than that. I would say that a main plot point would be the love triangle, but it really isn't. It's play by play, every kind of love triangle you could think of. Arison is the prince of the country who destroyed her entire culture, and so obviously she's not really gonna like him. And like in the beginning, he's very rude to her. He is threatening her. He's telling her like, I have an army on your border. If you do not go along with me, I will send the order for them to attack. And then she's very sarcastic, snappy, witty, showing him that she won't back down because she's just that kind of strong lady, right? I don't know if you can tell, but I really hate that stock character. It was so annoying. But anyway, he's super mean and rude to her until they get to his home country. And then he does a total 180 and he's like, I don't want to be your enemy. I never agreed to this. I want you to be in love with me. I want to be in love with you. Things like that. It's so stupid. It's so freaking stupid. So Kalys is one side and Arison is the other. Arison, obviously the bad guy, the broody, mean one. He is also damaged goods, but like emotionally damaged. He wants the approval of his evil mother. And so he goes along with the orders that he's been given because he wants her to be proud of him. He doesn't actually want to do this. He never was part of the attack on Rodair, so he's absolved of all the guilt and of all the consequences, and he's never actually a bad guy. He's just only sometimes a bad guy. And then there's Kalys. Like I said, he's very flat. He's got nothing. He's like the good guy. He's on the side of the rebellion, kind of. Like he's not a rebel, but he is helping Thea. I forgot her name. He is helping Thea connect with some of the rebels. And so he's like helping her hatch the egg. He's, like I said, a scientist. So he's experimenting with the egg with her. And he's so hot and sexy and damaged and so cute and nice, and he gets her and she's so comfortable with him. Ugh, it's so cringe. She kisses Kalys like a few times and they like run away together at the very end. So I still don't actually think that they're going to end up together. I think she's going to end up with Arison, mainly because they went out of their way to let you know that he's like super hot. And so obviously he's a love interest and not like an evil, nuanced character. I do want to talk about this a little bit because I really hate this kind of enemies to lovers. Like it's obviously supposed to be enemies to lovers. Maybe not end game, like they don't end up completely together, but like enemies and then he wants to love her, right? So enemies to lover, right? And it just doesn't work for me, mainly because there's no actual character development. There's no actual atoning for wrongdoings. There's no moral grayness, which is what I want with enemies to lovers. So for example, in enemies to lovers, what I tend to see is one of two paths. You have character A, which is the good guy. She's on the side of the rebellion. She's the underdog. She's fighting for the right side, right? And then you have character B, who's on the bad side. And what I most commonly see with this is path 1, where the bad guy character was never actually bad. He was just in the bad side, he's born into the bad family, or he, was forced into it, but he never agreed with it. And also, he never wanted to do anything, or he never did anything. And so then he's always just like a good guy on the bad side's team, and then he's not. He joins the rebellion as soon as possible. With this path, it's used so that the character A can feel good about falling in love with character B because he's on the bad side, but he's not actually bad. And so then he is never actually guilty of anything that he's done. And so character A and character B can fall in love together. The other path I see sometimes, not as often, but you still see it sometimes, is character A is the good side, character B is the bad side, but he is like just a straight up villain. Like, he has done bad things. He has done super, super awful, terrible things, killing people. He stands for the bad side, and character A just doesn't care. Character is just like, he's my boyfriend. What are you talking about? But what I want with enemies to lovers is like a Zuko arc, a well done Zuko arc. Somebody who was on the bad side, whether it was because they were manipulated or if they were just evil, and then they realize their badness. They realize the corruptness or whatever, and then they atone for the things that they've done. And then because of that, they are accepted by character A, and then love redeems all and whatnot. A really, really good example of that is like She-Ra. You have Adora who leaves very early on. She leaves the corrupt system very early on, but Catra does not. And then she's like enemies. They're enemies, but they have like a romance going on. They have a very like fraught relationship, very complicated, but then they end up because love cures all. Love atones. Love helps. Anyway, another good example of that is the Legend trilogy, or at least the Legend book, the first one in the trilogy, by Marie Lu, because you have June on one side, who is part of the corrupt militaristic government, I think, and then Day, who is an outlaw, and they both cause each other a lot of pain, but then they work through it because love. And also June realized that what she was doing was bad, and so she grew as a character, and so did Catra. This does not happen in this book. That kind of character development does not happen. Erison is just good. He never actually wanted to do any of the bad killing things, and he wasn't part of the ambush, the attack on Rodair, or anything like that, and so you can feel good about liking him as a romantic lead because he's not actually bad, which is not what Enemies to Lovers is about. It's about character development. So that's what's his name's like character arc. So Thea's character arc, very loose description of that. It's not very well done. It really doesn't matter. So Thea's character at the very beginning is that she's a crow rider. She's kind. She's sweet to the people of her, country. She's brave. She's determined. She's strong. We see a very small snippet of that in the prologue. And then the attack happens, and obviously she is fighting a lot of survivor's guilt and trauma. She ends up depressed for like 6 months, 6 or 7 months. I don't remember how long it was. We are told over and over that she's like lost herself, that she is no longer strong. She's very, she's dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome. Like I said, survivor's guilt. Her whole thing is that she stays in bed. She can't get out of bed. My issue with this is that we see Thea at like the tail end of her depression, and so she is already halfway through her character journey. We see her getting up out of bed over and over again in the very beginning, and how it's like a struggle. I'll get to that. It's not really a struggle. How it's like a struggle for her to get out of bed, but almost immediately she has no issue with it. And every so often we hear her say in her narration, like, I wanted to crawl under my covers and go back to sleep forever, but I wouldn't let myself. Or like, if this was a month ago, I would have wanted to crawl under my covers, but I can't do that now. We are already past the hurdle if she is already able to bring herself out of the depression, because we don't really see her coming out of her depression. We see her a little bit sad at the beginning, and I think that's what it's supposed to be, is her depression. Then almost immediately she is able to do everything she needs to do in order to fight in this rebellion and be a secret undercover spy and get information and whatnot, and stand up to the evil queen and her sassy fiance, and fall in love again, and make jokes with her best friend. So saying that like overcoming her depression is her character arc doesn't really count, because it's over before we even get into the actual story. If you take that depression as her character arc out of the equation, She starts the story one way and she ends the story the exact same way. She stays the exact same for most of the story. There's only a very small part in the beginning where she keeps telling us that she's not the same as she used to be. But she's still making snappy comebacks. She's still getting out of bed. We don't see any struggle. There is one, maybe even two scenes where it is actually hard for her to get out of bed. And even this shows us that we don't see any struggle. She doesn't want to face the ugly truth of her new fiance, and so she can't get herself out of bed. And Kiva, her best friend, her confidant, the person who inspires and motivates her, who has helped her the entire 6 months feel better and get back to herself, comes into the room and is, telling her, you get out of bed or I'll splash some water on you. And then she sits on the edge of the bed and she's like, okay, well, you can sit up with me. And she does. She sits up and she's like, okay, now you can stand up with me. And she does. Thea stands up with Kiva. Thea is like, oh, this is what she's been doing to help me feel better. She's been breaking down these hard tasks, these overwhelming tasks become step-by-step instructions of just small manageable tasks, which is a thing. If you struggle with depression or anxiety and tasks feel super overwhelming and you would rather just do nothing than actually do like basic health care tasks, therapists will advise breaking it down step by step. Like, don't make an entire meal, just eat the lunch meat that's in your fridge before it goes bad. Or you don't have to clean your entire bathroom, but you can wipe down like your vanity so it looks a bit nicer. And it's step by step. Little bit of progress goes a long way. And then eventually you find that it's easier to actually make a meal or to clean your bathroom or to brush your teeth or anything like that, which is very helpful advice. But the thing is, Kiva does this. She's like, sit up. Okay, Thea can sit up. Stand up. Okay, Thea is now out of bed. And then Kiva's like, okay, now get dressed and come down and, face your fiance or whatever the actual situation was. I don't remember. It's not helpful at all. And like, yes, Thea's main hurdle is that she can't bring herself out of bed. And when she's out of bed, she's able to like do things. But if you're thinking about this as like depression as an actual hurdle, depression as an actual conflict when it comes to Thea's character, it is so hollow. Because like we are told that she is sad over and over and that she has the survivor's guilt, that she is depressed, that she feels like she's nothing and worthless over and over. But then when it comes to the actual actions of the book, she's just able to do whatever. She's just able to overcome it. And then, like I said, that is the very beginning, like maybe first 5 or 6 chapters. And then once she's in Elusia, the like enemy kingdom, she's just cured basically. Like every so often she talks about how she's worthless or like she wants to hide in her bed again, but she doesn't. And she just isn't worthless because she's doing things. Obviously, mental health is complicated. It's just weird because I've read so many books where depression is like a main hurdle in a character's arc and their development and whatnot. And you feel it. You can feel the depression. You can feel the challenge that is everyday basic tasks to this character. And you can feel the weight of being worthless with this character, and it really resonates to people like me who haven't even experienced like chronic depression or traumatic experiences. And it's still so atmospheric, it's still so in depth that you come out of the book going, I think I might be depressed now because oh my god, that's terrifying. You feel hollow reading the book, and I just didn't feel that with this book, because it felt so flat and just explained to me that, oh yeah, she's depressed, but you don't actually see the character struggle with it. It just didn't feel well thought out. This is fantasy setting, but this is not fantasy vibes. Like, the characters are very contemporary. They are very modern. The language is very modern. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. You do not have to use Shakespearean language or thee and thou and whatnot to make fantasy vibes. You've got Gideon the Ninth, which is a completely different world. Yes, it's like in the future different world, but it is so different from our world. It is so based in necromancy, which is something our world doesn't even have that we know of. And it's so far in the future that it's so different. It is another world. Those characters are referencing memes. Those characters are saying funny jokes. They are saying very modern slang words, but it still works. And I still feel like I'm on a very different world. Like I'm in a different planet with them. I never once questioned the setting of Gideon the Ninth. I knew I was in this like ancient yet futuristic, otherworldly, necromantic planet. Even with Gideon wearing aviators, even with them referencing toothbrushes and piñatas and things like that. So I guess there's like no excuse for a fantasy book to feel contemporary even in a fantasy setting. Like, I need to feel immersed in the world, and I just wasn't. It's also the same boring, flat side characters that are mentioned offhandedly as being queer, but they have no actual significant relationships with same-sex or gender-queer people. Kiva is Thea's best friend, and she is queer, and she has a crush on Alma, who is like a servant of the queen, but she's also like a rebel spy. But Alma is like not a character at all. She doesn't have any impact on the story, and don't even get me started on like, oh yeah, she does at the very end. Like, she does not have an impact on the story. She's also just there for no reason. And then she and Kiva have this relationship, but like the relationship isn't significant at all. It's just like Kiva is mentioned every so often to go on a lunch date with her. I guess it's a step towards representation, even if it's not great representation. The timeline didn't really make sense to me. So Roder and Alucia, who are enemies, and they've had like a fraught political relationship for many years, like all of Thea's lifetime, I think. There was a thing that happened before Thea was born that killed her father, and I think also killed the Evil Queen's family. That was somehow related to the treason that caused the massacre to happen. I don't know if it's the same event or if it's different, but there's like Turin, one of the leaders, like attacked the Alucian royal family, and that killed Razel's father, and she had to become the evil queen. The Turin people were employed with Razel, and then she had them attack 17 years later, I think. I could not make sense of it. I don't know if the battle that killed Thea's father and Razel's family was the same battle, and then she was plotting this for 17 years. It really sounded like they happened back to back. I feel like it didn't, because she kept saying it happened, the first thing happened before she was born. So obviously that couldn't mean it was back to back. I don't know. It was weird. I could not make sense of the backstory between the political wars. Something that bothered me with the writing style is that it was all metaphors. It was metaphors right after each other. Yet even as I had the thought, it felt distant and detached, as if it come from another person. Trying to hold on to it was like trying to hold smoke in my bare hands. I knew what I needed to do, but working up the will to do it felt like trying to fight my way above water in a depthless ocean. Like, that's two very different metaphors right after each other in the same paragraph. There were so many. Almost everything was like another thing. And a lot of them were bird themed, obviously, because it's crows and she's crow rider. And so all of the metaphors were bird theme. I think at least in the first half, she used something dug into her heart like a talon 4 times. Along with repeating metaphors, she kept repeating about the loss of the crows and how the Alucians had tried to snuff out their culture, had tried to break them, had tried to end them, had tried to kill the country or whatever. She said that over and over again, and at a certain point I just got so tired of it, because I was like, I know, they're not gonna break you. I get it. Just shut up now. Get on to the actual plot. Stop trying to end every paragraph or every chapter with like, they tried to kill us, but we won't die. Like, shut up. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the bow situation. So it makes complete sense that Anthea, who is training to be a crow rider, meaning she's gonna fly in the sky, it completely makes sense for her to have a bow. It's a long distance weapon. She can shoot from overhead. Like, it makes sense. That's why a lot of cavalry people use bows and arrows, because like distance, moving, you can aim while you're moving. You don't have to use your close combat skills. Like, it's great. It is a bit cliche because it seems like every main character since Katniss now uses a bow. But as somebody who has taken an archery class here or there, I had some issues with the bow. My first one is that there's a specific section of crows called battle crows, and they have metallic feathers, and these feathers are used to make something called black gold, this magical element that's special to Rodair that is stronger than steel, and they make all of their weapons out of this black gold. Thea then explains to us that her bow is made out of black gold. There are a lot of times where two things can be true at the same time. This is not one of them. First of all, this is black gold. I assume it's just called black gold because that's a cool name. Because if you know anything about metals, you know that gold is not a good metal for weapons. It is so malleable. It's so soft. It is one of the softer metals. It's why it's used in jewelry and like decorative things, is because it's very easy to shape it into things that you want. Solid gold, like swords, don't exist other than for decorative purposes because it's not a good metal for weaponry. It's too soft to be like usable as like a sword or a blade, or if you make it thick enough to be durable for like a sword, it's too heavy. It's not gold. They just call it gold because it's a good name. It's stronger than steel. It's magical metal that's stronger than steel. Okay. Bows need to be flexible. They need to bend. I don't know about like modern day bows because they've got like pulley systems and whatnot. They are completely different, but I've used like historically accurate bows. And if you don't know, bows are like stick straight when they're not strung, and then you bend them when you put the string on. You bend them into that curve shape because bows are based on tension. Like the whole point of why they work is tension. There are metal bows, but they do need to be flexible enough to bend. And like, even if it was just made in that curve and like permanently strung, it still needs to bend as you draw the bow. Very unlikely that this metal that is stronger than steel can make a very good bow. But whatever, it's a magical metal. Who cares? Fun, magical bow, right? So at one point, she is fighting with Arison, like they're sparring because she's trying to help him win a hand-to-hand combat battle. And obviously he beats her because he's bigger and stronger and has been training for this longer. This is like a friendly sparring match, right? He's like picking her up and dusting her off, and she's like, next time we're bringing weapons and I'm gonna beat you with my bow. A bow is a long distance weapon. I truly don't know if she meant like, I'll bring my weapon and show you that I'm actually good at something, which is archery, and I'll best you in like an archery competition, a little Merida moment. Or if she was like, yes, we will fight with our weapons and my bow will beat your sword. I don't know. Like, is she saying that she's gonna like unstring her bow and just use it as a metal staff? I'm not sure. I'm very confused on what that line was. At that point, it became very clear to me that this author had no interest in actually writing fight scenes and like the fighting competitions or like the actual fighting action moments. So many of them are either very short, like so-and-so punches the other person, or they whack him and then he goes down, or it is just mentioning that Kiva and Thea go to train. You see that in so many of the chapters, like, or chapter breaks, is like, is Kiva and I went to go train, or we just got back from training, but we don't actually see them train. Is she only training in archery? Is she sparring? Is she working on other close combat melee weapons? Because it doesn't seem like the author is interested in explaining that. And it's fine if the author isn't interested in explaining that or writing those scenes, because not every author is going to want to write close combat, fun, action-packed fight scenes. But the problem is, this author has chosen to write an action-packed, close combat fighting book. She's writing a war book with, like, rebellion, where there's a big plot point, not really fleshed out, but a big plot point that I assume is going to be in the second book more, is that there's this fight to the death competition. You can't write those things but then be uninterested in writing the actual fight scenes. And yes, there's a couple of fight scenes throughout the book, like so-and-so hitting another person, or, you know, them teaming up against a bad guy or whatever, but it's so dry and uninteresting and boring, and I skimmed them because who cares? Not to keep using Gideon the Ninth, but that is a book that is very interested in those fight scenes and using those fight scenes to show character. And yes, there's like a montage time skip where Gideon, in like 6 months, learns how to use a rapier instead of her two-hander sword. You also see a lot of sparring sessions in which there's character development or plot development or character growth, or interactions that are interesting. And, Tamsin Muir just does a wonderful job of using those fight scenes to the advantage and actually telling story through the fight scenes and not just stopping for one character to hit another character, which is what this book does. Oh, this was a pet peeve of mine. In the very beginning, they have to ride horses now because they don't have crows, and Thea just kept kicking her horse. She kept saying over and over, like, I kicked it into a walk, I kicked it into a canter, I kicked my horse into a trot. And I was just sitting there just getting like, that, you don't have to keep kicking the fucking horse. And I guess the animal of the Aleutians is a horse, and they're these big, beefy war horses. There's big, beefy stallions. They draw carriages, things like that. Big draft horses, right? All solid black, whatnot. And that's like their pride and joy, their animal that they have. And at one point, Thea is like looking at these horses, and one of the like barn hands brings a bucket of food, but Thea notices that the food is meat, and she goes, oh my God, is that meat? And Arison just smiles and is like, they have big appetites. Are you saying that these horses are not like real horses and are magical horses that eat meat? Or are you saying that you feed your horses meat? Like they're normal horses, they just eat meat. Are they magical horses? I'm not sure. I don't know. Nothing was ever explained about the meat. I was clearly baffled by that. Very early on in the story, Thea gets attacked by people. They're not very important, and Kiva fights them, and one of them ends up dying. Like Kiva kills him, and after a while Thea notices like Kiva is kind of off. She's not acting correctly. She's acting different or whatever, and she's like, what's the matter? And Kiva finally reveals that the guy died and that it really affected her. And I sat there going like, oh my God, who fucking cares? You're a palace guard. You have to kill people. So sorry about that. Also, you've written a war book. I get it. This is the author's idea of nuance, is like this character has complex feelings about the fact that she killed someone even though it was for her job. I totally get it. But like Thea kind of just tells her to get over it. She's just like, oh, that's your job. Like it's great that you feel guilty about it. Don't ever let them take that away. But also you don't need to feel guilty about it. And then Kiva just like never brings it back up again. So like, what was the point? If it was actual character nuance, I feel like it should have come up again at some point. Like maybe Kiva not being able to draw her sword on somebody even though they're attacking her or something. That doesn't happen. It should, maybe it should have happened. Oh, that also brings up something, like in Kiva's backstory, she reveals like her country that she comes from is very militaristic, and so in that country, after her first kill, she would have named her sword, and so she's feeling like pretty conflicted about that. Is like, I've had my first kill and it doesn't make me feel good. Like why is this a thing of honor in the place that I come from or whatever. And so Thea's like, don't name it because you killed him. Name it in spite of killing him. And it's like, you're still naming it because you killed a man. That doesn't compute in my head. Like, there's no difference in that. I just found it in the book. The first time we actually see her use a weapon, and this is a princess who is trained as a like crow riding warrior. It's 170 pages in is the first time that's that many pages in. First time we actually see her use the weapon, the bow that she's so great at using, that she loves so much. I think what I want my closing thoughts to be is that this book is so boring. It's so boring. There are a few nuggets of like really good ideas and like really thought out backstory, and maybe even some great character interactions. There were some lines that made me laugh. There were some things that I thought were fun or cute or interesting. But all in all, the actual structure of this book is so flat and boring. It is so cliche. It is so predictable. It is so by the books. It's like you've read every YA book out there in the world and you took the average of the plot structure and you said, that's it. I'm going to have the underdog rebellion. I'm going to have the love triangle. I'm going to have the evil queen that's just evil for the sake of being evil for no reason. It's just like awful, terrible person. I'm going to have like a very flat background character who, you know, we get to have fun, sassy conversations with, and I'm gonna have, you know, the crow, the magic crow at the end. Once he hatches, he's like the avatar, I guess. He has like all of the powers. Like, only crows only have one power. Like, there's the storm crow, and then there's the earth crow and the sun crow, and this crow has like so many different powers. He's got all of them, and they're like, how can that be? That's so different. Like, he's not supposed to do that. Why is he the avatar? Why is he the avatar? That's so weird. Like, you pick and choose everything that you like about all the other different popular media at the time, and you just go with you just go with that. And you say, I want everything. So you go with everything. But then you don't actually develop anything. And the characters are flat. And they're boring. And they just say the exact same things every other fucking character has ever said in their fucking life. I'm getting heated. I need to stop. Oh my gosh. And then, like, the love triangle was so boring. Like, obviously, she's going to be with the hot guy, which is both of them. She's in with Kalis. She's giving him kisses. They're about to run away together. Arison, the evil arranged wedding guy, is talking to her and he's like, I love you. And she's like, thank you. I don't feel the same way. And he's like, but you don't love me? She's like, we're gonna be great allies. Like, I can see the kindness in you. I can see this and that. And he's like, but you don't love me. And she's like, well, you've made your choice and I've made my choice. And it's so, I was rolling my eyes. I was like, big fucking whoop. Sorry. I think she's a little justified in not being able to love you or what you stand for, even though he doesn't stand for it. He just wants his mother's approval because he's damaged and broken inside. So stupid, so boring, so stupid. I didn't even mention the whole thing. Thea and her family, she's supposed to not have a good relationship with her mom, but then her mom died, so obviously she's like, I miss my mom. And so then she also has a very bad relationship with her older sister, who had to take on her mom's responsibilities because she's now the queen and whatnot. And she's like, my sister just doesn't get me. She just wants me to get better, but I can't just get better because I'm depressed. But also you got over that depression almost immediately after you found this storm egg that gave you hope, and that's not how depression works. Alrighty, that's gonna be it for me. Have you ever read The Storm Crow or Kalyn Josephson's other books? Apparently she's got a lot. This was her debut, but she's got a few other books out there. I have no interest in reading the second book at all. I didn't even read the last couple of chapters. I skimmed it so much. Put your comments and thoughts down below. I say this is exactly worth $1 or $1.25. I would not pay $2 or $3 for this. I don't even think I'd pay $1.75 for this. I think I paid $1.25, and that is exactly how much this book deserves. And I'm not interested in any other books by this author. But if you are, good for you. You have a wonderful time reading those. I will not. Thank you and bye. I still don't think I know the difference between a crow and a raven. Oh, hi, kitty. I didn't know you were there.